Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Ben Frisch, the team lead with the Simcoe South Georgian Bay Digital Service Squad, joined here by Rochelle, Digital Service Squad team member, and our fearless leader, Tim Newton, manager of the program, manager of the Small Business Enterprise Center in Collingwood, the Simcoe South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center. Got to get the full name in there. So the Digital Main Street program, if you haven't heard about it, is funded by the FedDev Ontario, the Ontario government, as well as the Ontario BIA Association and Toronto Association of BIAs. And as I mentioned, it is managed by here in Simcoe South Georgian Bay. It is managed by the South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center with additional funding from the County of Simcoe, the Town of Collingwood, and the Town of the Blue Mountains. So we're super grateful for all of their support in making this happen. We wouldn't be here without it. And we recommend, if you haven't connected with your digital service squad, which I'm pretty sure looking at the list of attendees, you all have, but in case you haven't, we are still here, we're still active and available for hands-on consultation and support in developing your digital marketing and enhancing it, as well as providing resources and information about other programs, especially through Digital Main Street. There's a plethora of resources and programs to help you, especially right now. So definitely get in touch with us and we'll be happy to help.
All righty. So today we are talking about why, okay, thank goodness. All right. Oh, no, that's okay. Come back. I hate my computer. Everyone knows this. All right. Okay. So today we are talking about outsourcing your digital marketing, what that looks like, what is effective outsourcing, what is a reasonable investment or a smart investment, and how do we come to those conclusions. All right, so this webinar is going to work very differently than any of the other ones that we have done and that you may or may not have already attended. Rather than kind of that more structured, all right, here's A, B, and C, and here are all the tools involved with that. This is going to be a little bit more of a freestyle kind of chat, because we have three very different and very valuable perspectives here between Ben's and Tim's and mine. We all bring kind of our own flavor and background and history when it comes to what this looks like. So what does effective outsourcing look like? So that's how this is going to run. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Because we are on a schedule here, I do have a Q&A period built into this webinar at the end of it. So please, as we go, drop as many questions or comments or whatever into the chat. We will address them at the end once we have finished the discussion portion. So just keep that conversation moving. All right. So the introduction, outsourcing / micro hiring, which is kind of a newer, trendier version of the same thing. It is directly related to careful ongoing business planning. What we really want to stress is that micro hiring is not a kind of one size fits all, and it is not an instant solution. It should be built into the fabric of your business plan, and it should be part of your ongoing business planning. Not just sort of that default, oh, I'm having trouble with this, I'm just going to hire someone to do it. Hiring someone, as I say right here, hiring someone to do the things that you don't like to do will not necessarily yield meaningful results. It's all about finding the right fit and knowing your business's overall direction. That is the critical component to it, because otherwise you're just going to be kind of blindly entering relationships and forging contracts with people, and that may not actually be serving your business the way that you think that it is. We want to avoid the Band-Aid solutions. While sometimes they are necessary, they will ultimately not support long-term growth. So an example that I sort of have for that is if you have a storefront and all of a sudden, your sink is clogged or something like that, a Band-Aid solution is hire a plumber because you don't know how to fix that. And that's okay. That is a necessary evil. Like you need to employ people who know what they're doing to get you out of immediate jams like that, or ensure that your business is not compromised because of sort of those emergency situations and whatnot. It may not be in your best interest to have like a micro hired plumber on retainer, for example, because perhaps plumbing issues are not something that that necessarily needs to account for every single aspect of your business, sort of thing. The same way that an ongoing website developer might support your business or something like that. So that's kind of what I mean by those Band-Aid solutions. So having a clear vision ahead of your business and a strong mission behind it will ensure that your micro hiring budget is spent wisely. So then the only other thing that I wanted to touch on before we get into the topics for today is I just want to share sort of my own story about micro hiring and where I've learned it is sort of invaluable, and where I was maybe not seeing that before. So as most of you already know, I own a theater company. I own Quarter Century Theater here in Collingwood. And one thing that I always wanted to do, but just never got around to doing, was hire someone to take like proper archival footage of my shows so that I could have, a record of the work that I'd done, and be able to, put it up on my website for people to watch or whatever it happens to be. It always seemed like such an overbearing expense that I couldn't justify, because when you're in the thick of it, as all of you would know, one more kind of bill or one more expense added on to something that's already taking so many resources out of you can seem really daunting and really scary. And, now thinking back on it, it's like, well, that actually would have been a really great thing to do, because now, especially when I'm not allowed to build the shows that I usually do, and I'm not allowed to create the same experiences for my audiences that people have grown to expect, there's kind of a lapse there, right? And it would be really nice to be able to say to people like, hey, remember that show you saw in 2019? Remember how great it was? Now it's on film, like check it out. You can tune in and take some of that winter depression away, or whatever it happens to be, right? So that's sort of my own micro hiring story of realizing kind of after the fact, like, hey, this is part of my long-term business plan, and I couldn't see the forest for the trees at the time. So that's my personal response to micro hiring and my history with it. So the topics for today, budget, we're going to start with planning actually, then we're going to move into budgeting, and then hiring, and then finally the Q&A. So why isn't it? Okay, fantastic. I'm just resetting my timer. Alrighty, so planning. So now we're going to get into the first part of this discussion component. So these were the two kind of, based on what Ben and Tim and I had spoken about, these were kind of the two major questions that I was able to sort of distill our conversation down to. So I'm going to use these as the launching points, and then I'm going to take some notes and kind of add to the answers to these questions as we kind of go. So Ben, Tim, me, what are the critical components of a digital marketing plan?
Oh, you stumped us right off the bat, Rochelle.
Good.
And I'll jump in with a thought here. And great to be here. And thanks for the invitation from the DSS to be a part of this session. Great. Really looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. So yeah, the critical components of a digital marketing plan, I think sort of all stems from, you got to figure out what you're selling and to whom you are trying to sell it. That's sort of the essence of a plan and the basis of such. And, figuring out that, here's a term for you, customer discovery. Identifying who the target customer is, the ideal target customer for the product that you are trying to sell, is a very powerful component of planning, and is really where it all starts. So once you understand who it is you are trying to sell to, and target them specifically, and we encourage people to create personas, if you will, or avatars of that target customer, so that they understand what makes the customer tick. You understand what makes them tick, all of your marketing efforts are to a certain extent demystified. You understand what you are selling and to whom, and therefore your actions that will translate into budgeting and marketing efforts, and then who you need to hire, which is what this conversation will lead towards, all demystify themselves. So identification of that target customer, understanding what you're trying to sell, and within certain companies, you may have products, you may have services that you're selling, and there may be nuances to each of those products or services, which would help you to go even perhaps one layer deeper, right? How you sell one product may differ from how you sell another product from the same company. That could result in a realignment of a budget. It could cost you more to do so. Does it make sense to sell or try to sell many different products or many different services, or should you really start with a focus, crack that nut, and move on to other products or services? So it's just sort of an opening thought there, really. But understand what you're selling and to whom, and it'll help to unravel a lot of the components of good planning.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. Because I want to say that I've seen far too often, like, business owners are just so eager to get into market, to start advertising, that they do sort of overlook sometimes that critical question of what am I actually selling? Especially if you offer a variety of products and services. It is okay to promote your brand, kind of an overarching ad, but just know that, brand advertising is a little bit more difficult to see that ROI, because that's kind of your part of your long-term plan, let's call it, where you're instilling that recognition. You're building all kinds of good vibes with your clients, your customers, of a brand that they recognize, that they can maybe trust. And but as far as an ROI goes, the important thing is drilling down to exactly what you're selling and to whom. The other thing too is, when it comes to creating the actual ad, is using really simple language so that people understand, when they look at the ad, they can understand what it is that you are trying to sell and how they can buy it, right? Because again, easily overlooked. People, tend to use a lot of buzzwords, industry speak, and a lot of times it's important to kind of bring that down quite a bit, to use language that your audience speaks, that they understand. And that really kind of all comes down to planning and understanding, as Tim said, that audience, what makes them tick, what they respond to. And yeah, it's a very critical component that just can often be overlooked. And it is, when we kind of got into the discussion of how to approach this, the title being budgeting, it's kind of our main focus, but we ended up putting planning first, because sort of an afterthought was, well, how do you know what to budget if you don't have a plan yet, right? So it is sort of a major critical component.
Sure is. Ben, you've got my gray matter moving here, and since we're doing this as a fireside chat, just another thought to throw out there, and that is the stages of time, and related to whether you're a business that's starting in a pre-launch phase, or whether you're an existing business. Planning is, of course, always an essential component. Ongoing planning is an essential component of any successful business. And the relevance that of that, I think, is important to sort of distinguish, because there would be, as we move into talking more about marketing, planning for the marketing portion of a business that's in pre-startup phase is quite different from marketing for businesses that are pre-existing. It sort of comes back to the cash flow conversation and question. When you're a business that's starting, cash is extremely tight very often, unless you're being bankrolled by somebody very, very generous, or you have the luxury of having significant wealth to start a business. But the planning portion of a business, as it relates to the time at which you are preparing to either launch or grow or reframe your business, is an important consideration to throw in there into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that point up. I think that leads really nicely to the second question, which is, at what point should a micro hire join your plan? And that was really the takeaway that I came into this conversation with, which is this. So planning for me oftentimes means prioritizing. It oftentimes means prioritizing, full stop. If I have a limited budget, so I am in startup phase, or still kind of like sowing the seeds of my business. So if I have limited budget, but I have unlimited goals, I need to be honest about what is critical and what can be managed in-house or sort of shelved for later. So how that ties into it for me is, if I'm able to really be critical about what those priorities are, and I determined that, like, hey, you know what, I've got a lot of great things on the go, but my website is really garbage and it's not serving me. Like I've gotten as far as I could with my kind of do-it-yourself Wix special, and that's it. Like I'm now I'm maxed out on my bandwidth, sort of thing. If I really have done the research and I know that most people are checking me out via my website, like that's how they're coming to find my business, that's how they're investigating whether they'd like to support my business, then that's sort of a no-brainer. All right, well, it's time to invest in that. I need help with this website, and that's where it's going to serve me the best. And then where this leads to is, for me, this ritual or this approach to it has always helped me plan my workflow, because if I know that I'm going to be handing off my website, for example, then that's great. That solved one problem. Now I need to account for, the fact that I have hired this person or this agency to help me with this. And so that means that, I'm going to have to tighten things up on the other end of things. And, I'm going to have to get a little more hands-on in terms of, maybe the bookkeeping side of stuff that I also equally don't like and and would rather not be taken care of. But hey, you know what? I've already assessed that the critical pain point here is handing off my website. So therefore, now it's up to me to be that entrepreneur and that business owner and take care of the rest of the business for myself until that next stage, until I'm at that next critical junction where it's like, all right, now it's important to be able to continue working on the business. I need to be getting out of working in the business. So next to go is going to be this thing, and I can justify that because of X, Y, and Z. So anyway, that's my contribution to that side of it.
It's a good growth strategy that, Rochelle, that you really defined, is understanding the right times to move into micro hiring, and back to the sort of the planning process. I would argue, working with business plans on a relatively sort of daily basis, and the planning process, that almost anybody can write a plan in an hour, almost a full-blown business plan. And what defines the difference between a plan that's been written in an hour and a plan that's going to hold water is research. And so the allocation of time in planning and towards planning for the purposes of planning is that research component. Confirming assumptions that you make in your desk side planning session is critical to support the notion that what you're about to embark upon, what you're about to do, makes sense for your business. So, you know, don't ever shortcut that research component and the requirement for it.
Yeah, and what I would say too is that something that I've really enjoyed as a major part of the digital service squad and the digital Main Street program has been the sort of educational component, right? Because I still think, and Rochelle mentioned this too in the I think in the intro, that it's not about just handing off something that you don't want to do. You know, it's still critical that you understand what are the kind of roles and responsibilities of that hire. You know, you'd never hire a cashier without fully understanding their roles and responsibilities. And so, you know, I think it's important to point out that the same goes for someone building your website, someone, you know, doing your SEO, someone running ads for you. You still have to really try and wrap your head around what is it that their role is. That's it. How are we doing for time, Rochelle?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I don't know why this screen is like turning into little itty bitty text on me here. Yeah, we still have a couple minutes, so I was going to lead into Ben's fun little goodie pack that he has designed for everyone. So to help everyone with their budgeting and digital marketing journey, Ben has created an excellent document for everyone to take home. Ben, would you like to share your screen and I will stop?
Yes, absolutely. So if anyone was familiar, hopefully you've all watched the Digital Service Squad, the Digital Main Street training videos, which are really helpful, very insightful. Can we see this document? In the most recent one, video 1 is actually create a digital marketing plan. And if you've seen it, there's a slide in there. It's a template. There's about 9 sections. And I basically took those 9 sections and I built it out, expanded upon it into about a 5-page document, trying to keep in mind that, you know, the purpose of it is to, you know, not necessarily make it a cumbersome activity or, you know, a chore, but to really empower you with exactly what you need to look for and think about to create an effective marketing plan. And so I'll just kind of go through it really quickly. Oh, Tim just copied the link into the chat. So thank you, Tim. So you can download the Word document from there and use it as you wish. But so we start with kind of a pre-planning phase where we, as we talked about, you know, just really pinpoint exactly what it is that we're trying to sell and what makes it unique, and look at competitors, seasonality, all these kinds of, you know, important kind of pre-planning topics that we want to take a look at. Then targeting, also extremely important in terms of your demographics. Are they, well, and starting from new or return clients, you know, as Tim said, it's critical difference between a startup kind of plan versus an existing plan. Excuse my pup there. And then we can dive into, and, you know, habits, audience values, really diving into who are your target audience. The marketing plan itself then starts to set some objectives, and where are we going to run our media? How are we going to use that media effectively to speak to our target audience, to target them, the timing of it, the key performance indicators, and then we can set our budget. So that was kind of why we moved the budget in the topic of our discussion, because then we can start thinking about, okay, we have our objectives. What is it going to take to meet that, and what are some of the tools that we need to maybe create or have created for us. And then we can start thinking about the ad copy. So it's kind of a template where we can just copy and paste as many versions as we need to think about, the headlines, the body copy, visual copy, call to action, and like a visual description to just kind of help guide that conversation with maybe a designer, a photographer, a video producer, whoever might be creating content for the purpose of your ad. And then finally, once you've been running it for a while, you want to look at performance, or after the fact, analyze the performance and think about, how it performed. Did you achieve your objectives? Did you miss the mark? Did you spend all your money? Really kind of think about all those things. And then the next step is to do it all over again and make it better because you've learned so much from the process of doing that you can then take that learning and improve upon it.
Sorry, I had to flip back over. Excellent. Yeah, so that's great. So thank you, Ben. Yeah, that's such a super valuable resource. And I feel like people have seen similar kinds of documents before, because again, none of us are sort of reinventing the wheel here. Like these are all basic building blocks to effective marketing and everything. But I really appreciate how you've laid that out. I find that often when you're given kind of those outlines, it just feels very sort of sterile, and the questions aren't actually sort of designed for like humans who think and feel things to really like process them. And for me, at least, like it's always like, oh yeah, this is cool, and then it sits in a drawer sort of thing, which is a horrible thing to confess. But hey, like I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I really appreciate how you've structured that. I think that's a really great means to sort of like accessing kind of that basic stuff that we all have heard and know on a cerebral kind of level. So yeah. All right. Yeah.
And I'll point out too that people can book from our booking calendar for the DSS. They can book a session to actually sit down and work on that plan together. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So
there's no excuse not to do it, basically.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to screen share again and flip us back over to the next part. And I'm resetting my timer. Yay. Okay. So the next critical component is, of course, why we're all here. The concept of budgeting itself, and what to consider. What should your budget? What questions should you be asking before you create that budget, and what questions should creating that budget effectively be answering for you, right? So the first one is very broad, but again, this is really where our discussion ahead of this webinar kind of led us, and we sort of kind of agreed, like, yeah, this is worth kind of revisiting and touching on, and that is, what does budget really mean? So I'll open this up because I had an interesting response to it when I thought of it, and I'm wondering what Ben and Tim will think, and maybe they'll go, oh, please don't listen to her, and that's fine. So for me, when I think about what does budget really mean, for me, budget really means a realistic, authentic analysis of where your business is and what steps can be taken to improving it. And that's perhaps a different sort of definition than you may necessarily think, but it's like, yeah, okay, the denotation of budget is, a chart of your incoming revenue and outgoing expenses, and what does that all kind of equate to, and what is that bottom line, what does that look like? But again, similarly to what we were just talking about with Ben's awesome marketing plan, it's so much more than that, and there's so much more life to it, and it's far more organic than I think many sort of like business teachers or business schools necessarily give it credit for. And for me, at least, it helps a lot when I'm able to think about it in those terms of, okay, if this is a living thing, and I know that my business goals are right here, but currently I'm operating with, a budget or kind of like a funding pool that's down here. Well, this seems like a really tall ask, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get there. So how can I sort of reframe how I'm thinking of this budget to it becoming kind of that ladder or that stairway to where I want to go? So anyway, that's my controversial yet brave take on this subject.
Oh, you're on mute, Tim.
Yeah, I just had another screen over the top. I couldn't get to my unmute button. That's a very artistic take on it, Rochelle, which is of course what you are. You're an artist, a thespian and an artist. When somebody with a far less creative mind approaches it, such as myself, I would look at the word budgeting and think, what the hell does that really mean? And to me, it means planning. It means that you've actually been you've allocated yourself the process of budgeting, and that is planning what you are going to do with whatever resource you have available to you. And when I think about budgeting, two resources spring to mind. One is time, and the other is money. And business owners often suffer a lack of one or the other. They are both finite resources for all of us. So when we're thinking about budgeting, we need to consider, if we're in that startup phase where cash flow is extremely tight, how we're going to budget our time to achieve everything that we want to achieve and get the outcomes that we're looking for. And when time becomes scarce, because most of it is being sucked into the doing part of our business, we're working in the business as opposed to on the business, then we need to free up some of the other resource, which is cash, to allow us to continue to achieve the essential task of marketing, of promotion, of micro hiring and outsourcing, to allow us to continue to achieve and scale and grow the business. Whether it's staff, whether it's part-time staff, full-time staff, whether it's subcontractors, whether it's micro hiring, we'll talk about that in our next topic, but you need to allocate both of those resources adequately. So that's really what it makes me think of when I think of, what budget really means. It's the allocation of those two really important resources, time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that one of the best things about sort of the planning document, right? It gets you to think about, we set a goal of how much do you want to sell of this thing, right? So really thinking about that specifics, and then in what amount of time do you need to sell it? Is the other thing. So exactly as Tim's saying, time and money, and kind of merging those two together. But then I think that I'm losing my train of thought. Is what I think what I wanted to say was that the oh man, just drawing a total blank there.
I can add a thought, Ben, if you'd like.
Sure.
One of the most common questions that we get asked, this may have been where you were going, but one of the most common questions we get asked is how much should I allocate towards marketing? Was that one of the trainings?
100%. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Yes. How much?
Take it away.
Sure. Yeah. And so part of the reason to create that plan is to set a benchmark, right? We often respond to that, the only response really is like, you're the only one who can determine what is an appropriate, a safe amount, or a good amount to spend when it comes to your marketing, because everyone's different. Every product is different. Every business is different. Every audience is different. The process of filling out that plan, doing the whole document and repeating the process is going to allow you to set those benchmarks and determine like, okay, well, this time I spent $500 in a month, and we exceeded our goal, maybe, and then take that learning and figure out how you can, improve upon it. Or we didn't quite meet our goal this time, spending this much, maybe we need to spend more in better places, or, rejigging that thinking. But it's about benchmarking, right? Figuring out what is an appropriate amount to spend in order to meet your goals. And it's going to be different for everyone, unfortunately.
A question that came to mind. So this came up when we talked about this before, and so I just thought it would be valuable to table it here as well. So what are each of your thoughts on kind of the old adages that people often hear of, things like, the key to great marketing, or the key to setting up your marketing budget is, just allocating such and such percent of your revenue towards it. And that's what you need to focus on. Like that is your benchmark to kind of go by. Yeah. How do you feel about that? Is that relevant? Generally, is that perhaps really relevant, specific to certain industries, or do you sort of have like a totally different kind of opinion on that?
I definitely have. I mean, it's one of the questions I'm asked most often is, well, how much money should I be spending or allocating towards marketing? Of course, this session is focused on digital marketing, and marketing for a business encompasses more than just the digital components. So, that's one thing to consider. There is research that's out there, the Forrester research, which I tend to turn to, and in fact, Canopy Media, one of our local companies that works out of the Foundry downtown Collingwood, just actually earlier this week released a great article that had one of the bar graphs from Forrester research in it that talked about the percentage splits of revenue allocated to marketing. And those numbers, if I remember correctly, were between 7 and 15%, broken down differently by industry. So for me, it's, as Ben was just talking, it's a good benchmarking tool. I don't think anyone should kid themselves unless you're working on a shoestring budget starting a business, thinking that you could achieve greatness and all of your objectives and goals on spending 2% of your annual earned income on marketing efforts, and think that you're going to scale and grow the business. It's very unlikely. The flip side to that is you're not going to throw 50% of your earned revenues towards marketing, because your return on investment probably would be overreaching. You're not going to generate the return on investment that you had hoped you would if you spend half of everything you bring in on marketing. So there's going to be a sweet spot, and really only using those industry standards, if you will, Rochelle, you sort of mentioned those industry standards of sort of between 7 and 15% of earned revenues on marketing will help you set that baseline. Learned experience will help you refine that. So, when I'm helping businesses start, sure, you're creating a marketing budget. You have your marketing plan. You maybe use a tool like Ben's talked about here, a great tool, by the way. And you create intention to spend, and you follow through with some of it. Life goes on throughout your first or second or 10th year in business and causes hiccups in the road, bumps in the road, hurdles, reframing of things. COVID turns up and you have to reframe quickly. You may pull money back from some campaigns, you may add it to others. It's all going to fall out in the wash. Only you are responsible for understanding the nuances within your business, and therefore ultimately allocating a certain amount of budget to achieving those objectives. But setting those benchmarks, to your question, I think is good as a guide, but there will be the nuances to your business, which is unlike any other on this planet, that will mean that you will maybe spend a little more in one area as opposed to a little less, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to also fall back on what your certain skill set is. Maybe you allocate more of your time to doing something you both enjoy doing and you're very good at doing as it relates to marketing. But remember, that time can now no longer be allocated to actually selling the product or service or servicing your clients, because you're spending that time actually doing the marketing piece. So it's all in balance for sure.
Yeah, and then we only have a couple minutes before, just for timing's sake, we must move on to the final piece. However, before we move on from this, there is this second question, which is how can business owners reframe their perspectives on budgeting for digital marketing? And I believe we've already really touched on that, but just for the sake of ensuring that everyone feels like they've said what they need to say about this piece, are there any additional thoughts in relation to this question specifically from anyone?
I might suggest people, even check out our webinar that we did on ROI, so getting a return on investment with your digital marketing, because then there we really kind of expand a lot more on that, that perception of investment versus a cost, and it's all about kind of reframing how you think about it, how you think about that expense. It's a necessary component to operating a business, really. And so, I might point people to that webinar.
And just one final thought, if we have a moment, Rochelle, and that, thanks. That is that reframing perspectives on budgeting for digital marketing really comes down to consumer behavior. And there has been a shift in consumer behavior, and we can't avoid that. Consumer behavior has taken a shift towards habits of purchasing online, and therefore requiring more time from the business owner spent on understanding the world of digital marketing as opposed to what one might conceive of traditional marketing. And I'm not suggesting that you remove or move all of your eggs into one basket at all. There's this notion that when you're budgeting marketing dollars and time, you should be triggering touch points where consumers hear about you, learn about you, get to know you, like you, and trust you, and ultimately make a purchasing decision. But they need 7 touch points before making a purchasing decision, and they'll get those from a variety of different sources. The point I'm making here, though, is that we're reframing those perspectives relative to the importance of digital marketing, and people are spending more time online, and therefore we should probably spend or allocate more of our budgets to online initiatives, not necessarily, though, withdrawing from everything else that we do. So again, it's all in balance. It all makes sense when you're talking about it, but in reality, you're working in it and within it every day. So allowing yourself that time to step away from the grind of the business and become the visionary that looks at the component parts of your marketing strategy and where should I be investing my time and where should I be investing and budgeting my money is an important exercise to do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really important. I mean, just globally, so many things have changed in terms of how people are finding and buying the things that they need. And it's not like e-commerce as a whole concept is brand new. That's really not it at all. But this is really kind of the first time that we're seeing, like any kind of store at any stage of their business, really being forced to adopt this in order to survive. And so, if your target customer was always, say you own a knickknack shop or something, right? And your target customer was always the tourist who maybe is a little bit older and really wants souvenirs for their grandchildren or something like that. Like if that is has always been kind of your linchpin customer, the people you can always count on coming into your shop. well, what happens if they can't do that anymore? And how are you going to be able to convince people who are now online that your knickknacks are still just as important, even though people aren't traveling and don't need to pick up souvenirs for their grandkids anymore, and that sort of thing. That was just the the concept that came to mind for me. All right. So the last topic that we're on, oh my goodness, cursor. What the heck is, okay, I'm gonna leave that alone for a second. So the last topic that we are focusing on is actually hiring. So all right, we've done the work that needs to be done. We've made our plan. We know our budget. We are both mentally and emotionally prepared to invest in this person who's going to just elevate our business and our brand to a whole new level. How do we find that person, and how do we learn to trust that we have found that person, and that we're going to, aligning ourselves with the right individual or company or agency. So the first question is, what are some of the key considerations when beginning the hiring process? So the main point that I want to bring to it is always check biases. Remember that absolutely everyone that you're going to be meeting and speaking with is going to be an expert at something. And therefore, they will always frame their services or what they can offer you through that lens. Yeah, and you can't really escape that, and you can't fault anyone for that either. Everyone is going to know what they know and feel like what they can bring you is going to be what your business needs. But you know your business better than anyone else, and I think you need to really take a step back and understand what your critical needs are and what expertise you need, and therefore that will help with not being maybe caught up in for lack of a better word, kind of the bells and whistles that some micro hires might be bringing to the table, because ultimately those don't actually solve your problem, or those aren't actually part of your plan. A quick anecdote that I'll just share in relation to this. So in my first year of business, I ran a battle of the bands. It was kind of my big first fundraising thing. And I was really excited about it, but what I needed help with was finding people to submit to my battle of the bands. I don't have a great sort of understanding of the local music scene and whatnot, and I really wanted as many bands and musicians and singers and songwriters, etc., to know about my battle of the bands and to sign up for it if they felt like it was something that was right for them. So what I was looking for was someone who could help me with that, someone who knows the network and can help me spread my message. And so I found an individual, explained what I had on the go, said, hey, I hear you're highly recommended, that you really have your finger on the pulse in terms of the local music scene. It would be really great to sort of partner up on this, and I'd love for you to help me find and recruit those musicians and everything. And this person I basically came back to me and said, you know what you need is an event planner. You're holding this event at the wrong venue. You don't know enough about music tech and equipment rentals and all this sort of stuff. Your lighting's not going to be right. Your sound's not going to be right. Nobody's going to want to play at this band because you haven't done the right work leading up to it. And that is a valid opinion. But he's also speaking to me, a professional actor, writer, director with over 20 years experience in event planning and understanding how to successfully run live performance events. So in that moment, it's like, I'm not going to, reject him outright or make him feel bad for suggesting any of this stuff. But it's like, hey, buddy, that's really not what I need. Like, I appreciate your insight. I respectfully disagree. I know exactly how I need to run this event, and I have crossed all those T's and dotted all those I's. If you aren't willing to help me with what I need, and you're just going to come back and tell me that I need to be focusing on something else, then this is clearly not the right relationship that we've got on the go. So anyway, that's kind of my personal response to this particular topic.
Ben, do you want to jump in, or do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, kind of piggybacking off of what Rochelle said. I mean, I think that one of the important things that you can do as a part of that hiring process is the planning stage. I keep coming back to that, and how critical that can be, but also in providing a hire or potential hire with that plan, so that they know that you're really on the ball. You've done your homework. You know what you want. It can really help that conversation of whether or not this is a good fit. Because as Rochelle said, a lot of one person might think completely different from what you need. And that's okay too. I mean, they can be the expert. They are oftentimes the expert in the field. And I think it's important to value their opinion and to, take notice of it. But at the same time, if you do have to, someone in the room, there's the problem. Someone in the room has to remain focused on that objective, because sometimes, those conversations of how to get things done, what needs to be done, can lead away from that. And it can be anything from, as Rochelle said, just because of someone's expertise, their bias, what have you, it can lead away from that. So that's why it's really good to have that on paper, to keep everyone kind of focused and moving towards that single objective.
Yeah, I think you both raised some really good points, Rochelle, with a story, and Ben, it feels to me like you've stolen the words right out of my mouth, but I think it's a valid point. And so from my perspective, I think I just wanted to add a little clarification around this term that we've used a couple of times, which is micro hiring versus subcontracting. And to me, the distinction is, or at least the mindset as you approach this task of hiring, when you're subcontracting, the way I view it is you're just asking somebody to complete a task for you. When you're micro hiring, you're asking somebody to become a part of your team. And as the task is being accomplished or achieved, ultimately, the idea is that they add value back to the business, which is beyond the value of the purchased product or service from them to achieve that task. The old adage is you get what you pay for, and sure, you may end up paying a few extra dollars for an individual providing a service that helps you achieve X. But if in the process you receive Y, Z, A, B, and C as well, how fantastic is that? Because then together as a team, you are helping to grow and scale your business beyond perhaps the original mandate. And as well, just sort of building on the comments that Rochelle and Ben have both shared, in the sense that, that when you are micro hiring, you are bringing in expertise, and to approach it with a mindset and an attitude that if they are going to add more business, I have to give them creative license to be able to share their opinions and their thoughts. Ultimately, the buck stops with me. I'm the one that makes the decision about how much money I'm going to spend on something. But working through that hiring process and in the early consideration, it's about coming at it with an open mind, and that open mind will help you to be more informed and make those more informed and better choices and decisions that help feed your business, which is really what you're trying to do. As you feed your business, ideally, and Ben's referred to the ROI session, but your return on that investment should be significant. And if it's not, blow it up, reframe it, and come at it from another angle. So hire slowly, fire fast is another adage that we regularly use. Make sure that you're choosing the right people, and that if it's working, great, but if it's not working, you need to end that relationship before the pain creeps deeper into the business.
right. And then I guess we only have a few minutes left before we leave this topic and flip over to the Q&A. Any other final thoughts on this second question, which again, we know we've already touched on briefly, but any other sort of closing thoughts specific to how will business owners know when they have found the right fit?
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, like, so kind of exactly what Tim had pinpointed there about, bringing someone on as more a part of the team instead of just getting something done. I think, um, you know, right from the start, I said that this digital marketing, is and should always be an educational aspect of, of your own personal development as an entrepreneur. Just like every other aspect, you're always learning, right? And someone who comes into the team who can help facilitate that learning, I think is a really critical asset. Instead of just getting it done off to the side and no one knows how or why or where, that doesn't really serve the business as a whole. But someone who can really help guide that education component, and walk you through how things were done, how they performed, why they did things a certain way, why they wouldn't do things another way, can be a really, I think, critical asset for someone.
Yeah, valid points, Ben. I'd also add to that you'll it sounds crazy to say it, but you'll know when the fit's right. But that needs to be supported by and backed up by processes that make you feel comfortable too. And this was touched on just a couple of moments ago, but when you're micro hiring or subcontracting or bringing anyone into the team, make sure that you're documenting the processes and that you have an agreement that everybody can use as a tool to support the ongoing relationship, and it removes tension, it removes components of built anxiety. If you have that agreement established, you can always go back to it and revisit it, but that's what everybody in the relationship answers to. You will have probably something like a purchase order form that you can put the terms in and the deliverables in, etc. And if it needs to be revised or updated, or you've realized that this is fantastic and the ROI is, the return on investment is really beneficial to the business, and that you want to dig deeper and go further, then you'll review and go back to that agreement that you have, reframe it, and move on from there. But the lesson here is to make sure that the fit might feel great in the early stages of the relationship, making sure that you have the agreement documented so that everybody understands what they are responsible for in that relationship is really important to allow for the relationship to move forward.
Awesome. Right on. Well, I'm going to stop sharing now, and we can address these questions. I know we are a little bit over time, but we also did get started a couple minutes over anyway. So, oh, wow, are none of these questions? That's really funny. Maybe we don't need to at all.
I see there are certainly a couple of comments in there, which
yeah.
Specific questions, unless anybody has one they want to throw it in quickly.
All right. Well, yeah, it looks like we're pretty much good to go. Okay. Yay. All right. Well, I suppose we can end it there. Just to give each of our speakers, one last platform or whatnot. Any other major things? Ben, would you like to tell people about the Small Business Enterprise Center? Tim, why do I keep doing that? Tim, would you like to tell people about the Small Business Enterprise Center, since the squad is sadly slowly dissolving?
Yeah,
and
sure.
People need to know where to go.
Yeah, super quick plug here in the interest of time, but I just want to openly and publicly thank the Digital Service Squad for all their work. over the past months in delivery of these workshops, as well as wholeheartedly supporting the needs of the business community as they've worked through transitions in their digital marketing. So to Ben and Rochelle and the rest of the DSS team, thank you. Of course, it's not over yet. We've still got 6 weeks, four or 5 weeks or so before we wrap things up completely. So that menu of services is certainly still there, and people are available to access that in the short term. But longer term, the Small Business Enterprise Center still exists and supports any businesses endeavors in growing or scaling or reframing or starting new ideas, etc. We're here offering free consulting services as well as a plethora of programs and ongoing workshops. So if anybody on the call today is not receiving our newsletters, make sure you sign up for those and reach out to us. We're here. I like to think we're approachable, and that will help you figure out the answers to your questions.
Thank you. Ben, anything else from you at all about anything that we've missed?
No, I think that sounds great. Nice job on putting together a great discussion and a great topic. And to any of our attendees, anyone who's watching on YouTube or anywhere else, again, we are still around, so feel free to book those consultations, and we can even walk you through that plan of developing a marketing plan to really get you going.
Excellent. Right on. Well, thank you both. Thank you to Tim and Ben for your excellent insight. Thank you, Ben, for the super fun document that people can take away. That is so excellent. I love that we were able to put that together for people. Yeah, I guess this is for farewell in terms of the Simcoe South Georgian Bay Digital Service Squad. My goodness, there's so many titles. Webinar series for now. So thank you all so much. Thank you for attending. And yes, we do hope to see you around.
And we will be doing a live on Facebook next Wednesday at 10 a.m. as the squad to just kind of do a bit of a wrap-up discussion. Again, kind of a discussion format, but really kind of centered on general marketing tools, tactics, resources, and where people can go in the future. So you don't need to register for that. It's going to be broadcast live on the SBEC Facebook channel or Facebook page next Wednesday, same time, 10 a.m.
Sweet.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.